Hi there. So I thought I'd do something slightly different today for the video, and it's actually a slightly longer video as a result. And I know there's some sort of sound delays on this which you might find irritating, so you might want to just look at the PowerPoint rather than at me. But I thought I'd go through some start ideas about content marketing that I've picked up from blogs, one of which actually Kelly posted today in Block the Bitch VIP. And of course, nobody's had time to read it. So thought I'd put something together for you as a very, very quick sort of mini turbo webinar for everyone for a change. And why? I want to answer the question, why content marketing? And to get it firmly embedded in your mind that content marketing is a much, much slower process than a Facebook advert. You know, because people are always looking for this return on investment, ROI. But it's much, much harder to measure this. Jill in group will tell you that she's been putting out content for months now, sometimes a bit inconsistently. She's getting more consistent now, and guess what's happening now? She's getting more consistent, getting a proper posting schedule together, talking to people, interacting with them, following up on everything. She's making more and more sales, which of course is giving her confidence to keep posting and keep putting stuff out there, because there is nothing worse, and I feel it too, nothing worse than feeling like you're talking to yourself and no one's listening and no one comments and no one says anything and hardly anyone watches anything. And there are ways around this. So we're going to work how you do this so it's a proper plan. You know, we're working on that ourselves. It's not that we're perfect or anything like that. We're working on that ourselves alongside of the Fit Pros in our sort of 6-week boot camp so that we're all set, including us, for the new year. So why content marketing? Well, it builds your know, like, and trust. Absolutely, 100%. Because people tend to buy from people that they've met before. You know, a first hit, as in an article or, an advert, very, very rarely leads to a sale. I say this all the time on the phone to Fit Pros. When was the last time you bought something straight from a Facebook advert? If it was a service rather than an actual product, because I've actually been known to buy the odd thing from Facebook adverts, but they're always for little necklaces, little things, things like that, actual products. Services, no, I have, but it's because I already know that person. How do I know them? I know them through their content. I know them because I'm on their email list, because they gave away a freebie, because they write blogs, because those blogs have been shared, they're on my Facebook, they've added me as a friend, or I'm following them, whatever it might be. I buy from people I know, like, and trust. I mean, the like's not so important to me. It's the trust aspect. And it's because I think I'm making reasonable judgments about their level of experience and expertise. So really, why content? Because it actually generates traffic, not in a real, measurable way, although we will go into how to measure that later. So you can measure aspects of that traffic generation, but it builds this expert status, just like writing a book. You know, we've got a #1 best-selling book in Amazon for PCOS at the moment. So, it builds that expert status. People, if you're constantly blogging, constantly putting content out, people trust you more, and it builds your expert status, which obviously, apart from, a slow relationship building experience, it leads to sales eventually. It really does. Putting content out there leads to sales. It's exactly how Block the Bitch started. Loads and loads of content about marketing because it was identified as a need. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to have a paid group, which is going to have loads of webinars just like this, actually. And, would you like to join? And lots of people did join. I think it was something like 30 to 40 in the first couple of weeks, so that was quite awesome. And then, we did the whole sort of tactical prices are going up, which they did. If you want to get in, before prices go up, do it now, which of course we got about another 30 joining as a result of that. So little tactical things always help as well. But the building of the know, like, and trust started with content. Now, it might have just been 2 camera videos, but it was still content. And that built that know, like, trust fairly effectively for us, for what we were trying to achieve, or, decided we were going to try and achieve. So those are kind of the reasons that you start to do some content. Now, where you place it, of course, means that it could be shared, which means a greater reach. Now, this is all what we call unpaid traffic. In other words, you're not paying for advertising, and you can actually advertise content. People seem to think you do one or the other. You either have a Facebook advert or you have a blog. You can actually boost and promote blogs. And why not? Because a blog gives somebody a much more in-depth look at you, and you are then establishing yourself as an expert. As long as you have those opt-in forms or those tracking pixels or a plan on how you follow up that boost, there is nothing wrong with boosting content. Yeah, add value first, maybe even do it again, then target that audience with an actual buy now type offer. But we'll get into that a bit later. I'm just like kind of steaming ahead of myself, but that happens a lot. Right, so number 2 slide. Okay. You need to create a plan. This is the major downfall of most people. It's something I moan about myself. You know, we never seem to have a plan. Or Kelly has a plan for like social media posting, but I don't really have a plan for content generation. And this is all about actually getting your content generation plan together. So this is awesome for me, apart from anything else. So, you know, it's something I'm going to be putting into action. So by creating a plan, we know exactly what we're going to do on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and if we work it, Saturday, Sunday. And we repeat that process and repeat that process. And like I say, we don't see immediate results. Depending on how we've put the plan together, we don't necessarily immediate results. With FitPro Client Recipes, the content was going out for 6 months before we even launched the website. But obviously, I was putting quite high profile content out there. And then when the website was launched, I ratcheted it up another gear and started making video documentaries and doing some marketing type blogs to help people out with creating more money and more income so they can buy into FitPro Client Recipes. So, you know, we'd already established a sort of expert status in the 6 months before we even launched. And then we continued to, pursue that expert status more than anything else. That was the thing that we pursued by having guest bloggers, even paying some guest bloggers, by promoting their blogs, by making videos, by putting out, you know, tweets and little videos, you know, selfie videos and that type of thing. So we very much had a plan for launch, which was based around content and good content and becoming the experts, if you like. But I couldn't have just put out blogs for everybody. You know, I had to identify my audience, and my audience at the time was personal trainers, and that drove a lot of what I did as to which seminars I went to and what I did. So I didn't network locally in my local community, particularly because there'd be a handful of personal trainers, and of those, how many would then buy into FitPro Client Recipes? So I did it more on a national level, and I did it on social media by adding certain friends, talking to them. I have been anyway for about a year, you know, following certain fitness professionals who are slightly higher profile. I've been doing that way before I qualified. So, you know, the identifying your audience is really important, but you need to identify it for another reason. That's for tone. Okay. We need to know what tone we're going to talk to people in, what level of information we're going to deliver in our content. So we can identify, for example, a very common audience with fitness professionals is mums who want to lose weight. That's a massive, massive range of people with a massive different amount of tone. Now, I know that there's some, you know, oh, I just want to train everyone, but we're talking now about being able to talk to someone in a voice that they understand, that they feel is really personal to them. So, for example, if we said mums of my age, you know, I'm 48, I don't use all this modern slang. Half the time, I'm on my slang urban dictionary trying to look up what on earth you guys have just typed to each other, because it's way over there. You know, it's absolutely over my head. And I'm looking up what all these initials mean to find out what on earth anyone's talking about. So if you were to write or produce a video for my age range, you want to kind of tone down that slang a bit. I'm not saying tone down, you know, your ability to swear or anything like that. You attract your tribe, and if swearing is you and how you feel comfortable, then you do that. I swear quite a bit myself, so that would never put me off buying with someone. However, If, for example, as a fitness professional, you're going for corporate clients in a corporate marketplace, like business to business, A, they're probably not going to be on Facebook very much as a business anyway, though they might be there as individuals. But B, you may not want to be using all that swearing. So knowing your audience and as specifically as you can will really, really help you with like the tone of how you talk to people, whether that's in a blog, on a video, podcast, whatever it might be. You've then got to think, and this is something not all fitness professionals do, you've got to think about writing content for them, not for you, not to show off your knowledge or not to demonstrate you're a nice guy. It's what bothers them. What do they struggle with? Yeah? Because it's what they struggle with that you want to answer to become the expert. It's fairly logical if you think about it. But if you don't know what they struggle with, then you do some research. You don't just guess at it. You don't kind of think, oh, I know. Double check it all. So look at popular magazines and the stuff they're reading. Also note that for tone and positioning and you know, graphics and that type of thing and imagery. But also, what are those articles about? Particularly, you see this a lot, and this is very relevant to you now. Coming up in New Year, all those popular gossip magazines run diets. So how do they, you know, headline that? How do they publicize that? What are they saying about these diets that is getting people to buy off the shelf to buy that magazine over another magazine? You can also ask them directly, you know, if you've got lots of people on your Facebook who are, you know, actually in that category that you are niching, ask them, what are you struggling with? What can I help you with? You can do that as a question. You can do that through Google. You can actually pay to have a survey go out and get those responses and be open to what those responses say. I remember John Loomis saying when they set up the Social Media Examiner sort of society, their assumptions were that the solo entrepreneurs were going to be male, they were going to be of a certain age, they were going to be this, they were going to be that. And that would have been, if they hadn't double checked all this, the advert that they made, the language that they used. But they went and did their surveys, they went and found out, and they actually found out that they had more females interested in what they were doing than men. It wasn't a huge difference, it was like 60-40, but it was enough for them to think, right, so in our adverts we need to introduce a female figure, we need to talk in the sort of more feminine voice, we need to talk about the concerns of female entrepreneurs, so that had involved in the survey. So this is this ask, don't make assumptions, ask. You can go to Google and look at the Reddits on the Google to see what specific subjects are of concern that people are looking at, are wanting questions answered. And then you obviously can look at forums, other people's forums, other people's groups, see what the threads are about, what threads gets the most interaction, what are the questions being answered, who seems to know the answer, who doesn't seem to know the answer, are they misanswering it, what's happening with those threads. And these are personal trainer threads, unless you're training personal trainers. These are your avatar, so you need to get into their groups, you need to understand what they're talking about, you need to look at their forums and where they go, like Mumsnet, for example, would be a good example. Then you want to kind of define that, so it's not a 2-minute job, because you want to look at, sorry if I'm wiggling, I've got the builder in, so I can't sit in my normal place, it's just like I'm really uncomfortable. Then you want to look at recurring themes, because those recurring themes are going to start to give you a list of problems that they suffer and that are occurring. You know, one person mentioning the fact they've got flat feet isn't something you want to be blogging about if that you've only ever come across that once on, say, 20 different forums. However, if on 20 different forums you constantly see that question and constantly see people jumping and going, oh yeah, I've got that as well. Does that really affect you? How does that affect your posture? You know that this is a recurring theme, a recurring problem. You want to order them as well in strength. So when you get to your 100, and I know 100 seems a lot, so maybe aim for 50, you know, break it down. You then want to go, right, what are the real strong ones? What are the ones that are less popular? Because we want to start with our strong ones. We want our content to relate to the real burning questions that everybody in your niche, your avatar, seems to have. Now, when reading a blog, I saw that this was broken down as in runners as a niche. Yeah. And I know one of the guys in Block the Bitch does a lot of work with runners. But it said, you know, there's a massive difference between someone who's just starting out with the idea of running and, you know, maybe doing their first charity 5K. Between that and somebody who, you know, constantly runs marathons, they're going to have different concerns, different problems, different questions. So when you niche it really, really well, and think about that, because, you know, they're going to have different ways they talk, different levels of understanding, different levels of knowledge, and you have to appeal to the person you're niching. Yeah. Right. Let's move in slightly, to how do they currently problem solve? You see, people don't walk around, do they, like they've had this burning question for years and they've never tried to find the answer, which is kind of how we behave when we've got a blog. Hey, you know, you've been trying to get abs. We've got the answer. But actually, they will have already looked for the answer. So where have they looked? Which groups have they looked in? Which forums have they used? What websites do they seem to like or follow, or pages on Facebook? What blogs are they reading and sharing? Because you want to find the popular and busy ones and then make a list of them. So you're looking for about 20 to 30 of those across those descriptors that I've just given you. I will come back to why you want that list later. It's part of your plan, but it also gives you more insight into how your audience behave when they're looking for an answer. You know, Google's a great one. YouTube is becoming more popular, that type of thing. But they may actually have places they trust already, groups and forums that they go to for the questions they want answered. You know, I mentioned Mumsnet, massive forum. That type of thing is what you're looking for. Where do they go? Get that list. Make sure they are popular and busy and that people are interacting and talking in those discussions. Next one. See, I love doing this. Normally, you don't see me while I'm looking at these, and this is kind of really weird for me because it's a first. Woo! Right, so to become the expert, we look in more depth now at our topics that we've listed, our 100 topics. We look in more depth. We look like we have that problem. So we look at the blogs that people might have Google searched. We look at the forums. We look and see what's being said, how it's being said, but we look very analytically at them because what we're looking for is weaknesses. You see, nobody is saying anything original out there. You know, some people may follow one opinion, some people may follow another opinion, but both opinions already exist and the information's already out there. And Google is overwhelming in the amount of information out there. Let's be honest, how many of us get to page 2? You know, unless we're trying to avoid, you know, sponsored posts and things. Not many of us get to page 2 when we're looking for an answer on Google. You know, the top 5 is about as far as we get, and you need a lot of SEO work on that. You know, we'll come to that later. I'm not going to tell you how to, because everyone knows I don't know IT, but I know SEO, in the sense of, you know, it's search engine optimization. It's all to do with words. It's all to get you up that list. And that's about as far as my knowledge goes. I pass that over to outsourcers. Well, not outsourcers, team members, but, you know, that's how my SEO works. Anyway, what you're looking for when you look at these blogs is, what have these bloggers missed? You know, is it a badly laid out article? You know, is it all clumpy and you know, no spacing, no line gaps, no action points? Is it headed and subheaded? Is it scannable? Are there really awesome images that relate to what's going on? Where is the weakness in this article? Is there actual information that they've missed? Because what you're going to do with your top 100 is do it better than them. Not copy them, not plagiarize, do it better. So if it's badly spaced, got no subheadings, got no scannable lists, got no action points, got no summary at the end of the article as to, you know, what they've learned, what they're taking away, not getting any really useful diagrams, is not technical enough, is too technical, depending on your audience, of course, so you have to make these judgments. You are going to add value by doing that blog or post or video again, but better. And that is how you kind of start to establish expert status. Often, you'll know this, you go and read a blog about time management, you read another blog about time management, and they're all saying more or less the same things. So really it's a question of who's saying it most clearly, who's saying it really well, who's saying it in a way you can understand or you can take some take-home points. Yeah? Same applies to you. You don't have to be original. You don't have to be unique. You just have to do it better. Yeah, and add value that way. Okay. What information are people looking for? Well, it's not just blogs. I mean, I know we've talked about blogs, but actually we were talking about a content plan. A friend of mine, John, sent me an infographic the other day going, this is awesome, are we doing infographics? Yes, we do. No, it's not written into the plan. No, we don't have an infographic for everything we do. Yes, it's something we would need to look at. They can also be freebies. That's part of your content as well, having some kind of free thing they can claim off you at the end of it. You know, we haven't got everything infographicked up. We can get to it. We need that written into our 90-day plan. We need to outsource that to Fiverr. Someone needs to manage that process because Fiverr isn't as smooth as it sounds. You know, there's a lot of editing has to go backwards and forwards, but it's a cheap process. So if you can afford the time management on it, it's a really cheap way to get a nice looking piece of content that you've kind of directed and put together. In that sense, they've just prettied it up. You know, what information else do people want? Do they need more images? They need more diagrams? They need more demonstrations? Do they look at podcasts? Are they listening to podcasts? Are they, you know, putting the headphones on, going for a walk with the dog and listening to a podcast on, you know, motivation for weight loss, for example, in the age range we're talking about? Now, I'm 48. Don't think I've ever listened to a podcast. Nope, not even for business. So if you were to put all your content out on podcasts and you're targeting someone like me, you need to make absolutely sure those people are using it. I'm not just saying all 48-year-olds are like me and not listening to podcasts. I'm sure a lot of 48-year-old women are listening to podcasts, but double check. Don't make assumptions. Double check where your audience is actually at. Are they watching video? How are they watching the video? Is it video on Facebook? Because that's really, really popular now. Is it video on YouTube? I know that my daughters, who are 17, 11 coming up 12 and 10, love YouTube. They're always on YouTube. If you want to sell to them, and only one has some, well, none of them have any money, but, you know, in future, if you want to sell to them at the moment or in the next couple of years, YouTube will be the place to be putting out information to build know, like and trust with them. YouTube would actually be where to advertise more than Facebook. So do know your audience. Do like webinars, this type of thing. You know, very, very easy way to quickly establish expert status is actually to put together a presentation. Hey, guess why I'm doing the presentation? Because basically I'm selling my 6-week Get Your Plan Together boot camp. Well, everyone's selling something at the end of the day. I'm just showing you the sort of thing that we're going to cover in depth in that 6 weeks so that you actually have all this done. You don't just sit there, data for later. Oh, that's really good, Karen. That's a really good idea. Yeah, I should plan that. I should have that spreadsheet. Yeah, I should know what I'm doing. But, oh, look, a pigeon, a cat on a skateboard, whatever it is that distracts you. That's the whole idea of that 6 weeks, is that you're not distracted. You're getting a boot up the arse every day to actually do some proper planning, because it really is going to make your life so much easier than wandering around in the dark like we have been for the last few weeks while we've been reorganizing the whole kind of business model. And you're kind of like, what do I do today? Yeah, so we don't want you in that situation. We don't want us in that situation. We don't want you in that situation. Ebooks. Now, ebooks, you know, yeah, they're great, but I think a better way forward, unless it's a really, really short little ebook and it's just a freebie on a landing page, I wouldn't even go that far really sometimes. I would think a Kindle book on Amazon published, and you've pushed and you've used your promotion plan and you've used your publishing plan to make sure that gets to number one, stays at number one, becomes a bestseller and gets that bestseller flash, because that gives you proper expert status. Your own produced ebook that you just flog out on your different sort of social media, unless you've got a massive following, is kind of a bit time wasty in a way, you know. I don't see a massive value in that for you, but that's my opinion. So obviously double check with others as to what they think. But these are all different kinds of information that people use. Now we know the different kinds of information people go to. What is most effective with your niche and your audience? This way we cut down having to do 200 things at once and be on every social media site. You know, people are going, oh, should I be doing Periscope? Should I be doing Twitter? Should I be doing YouTube? Should I be doing Pinterest? Should I be doing Instagram? Should I be doing Facebook? Excuse me, that's 6. Are your audience, have they got that much time to be on all 6 all the time? Yeah. Concentrate your efforts. The more you concentrate your efforts, you will get better returns. And you'll save yourself a lot of time and a lot of stress. So that's something else to plan. Right. Let's move on. Okay. So I've kind of covered some of this, like where do you put your content out and what do you put out? Now, one way to look at this also is if you are starting to build like almost a Venn diagram of your avatar and where they are and what they like in forms of information, you can start to see which social media sort of audience is the best place to be. Now, for most of us, it's still Facebook, boringly. Even if we think Facebook is ineffective, it still gets the most shares, most, if we look at BuzzSumo for most articles, quickly followed by, I think it's LinkedIn actually for most articles. So if it's going to be Facebook, what appeals on Facebook? What gets people to go further than the excerpt and actually go read the whole blog, or the piece of information or the infographic or whatever it is you're putting up on Facebook? Facebook is actually quite visual. People like visual imagery, draws people in on Facebook. Pinterest is another visual, and obviously Instagram's a visual. So have to bear that in mind as to the type of content you put forward for the type of social media site you're trying to dominate and become an expert in your field to your niche on. Ooh, that was a lot to say, wasn't it? Never mind. Get there in the end. So when we're doing Facebook, we're doing articles, we want nice images, we want strong headlines, we want that little hyperlink so that they've got their interest. We're starting to ask those points of pain or answer that one particular question out of our list of 100. And to read more, they have to go to our blog, for example, and that's lodged on our website. And of course, we've got tracking pixels on there. Talk about that a bit later, but I'm sure you have heard about tracking pixels by now. I'm sure you have. If you're watching this, you probably have. Okay. If you're interested in things like, podcasting, then places like Stitcher list the top 100 podcasts. Now, talking to Luke today and saying how you can cheat your podcast numbers so that you can get to number 1 in podcasting in your niche really, really quickly. And it's actually how most podcasters get to number 1 in their niche really, really quickly, which is what I'm always saying to you guys. Don't believe everything you think you see. Don't believe everything you think you see, because the advantage of you using a few little tricks to get to number 1 in podcasting is then you're number 1 in podcasting. So anyone kind of vaguely going into your, section, a bit like, your Kindle books, will see that you're number 1, and then they'll click on it and they'll listen to it. So eventually that becomes genuine, but initially maybe not so genuine. So, a bit of skepticism, please, guys. But those top 100 podcasts, although they may not be totally reflective, they give you an idea of what's popular, etc. Now, why? Oops, I'm just going to have to play with the computer here. Could click it that way. No, I can't. Let me just get hold of this and shift it. Come on. Okay. What are we trying to do here? Right, now, I've mentioned people that have started to build some real interest from what they've been posting, and they have felt like they were talking to themselves and tumbleweed was going through their social media. And at that point, a lot of people just give up. They give up posting. Doesn't work. I was having a joke about it today with someone on the phone, and they said, the people who, write 3 emails don't get a sale, think email marketing doesn't work. Yeah. And we were laughing because, sometimes these things take like ridiculous amounts of time. I remember that FitPro Client Recipes actually turned a corner at month 6. So if you think about it, at that point, it had already had a year to 2 years of me just being friends with no business interest whatsoever with some high level sort of fitness professionals in the UK. Then we'd had 6 months of me talking about this wonderful new website that was going to come out and what it would do for Fit Pros, and me adding loads and loads of Fit Pros as friends. Then we had, just checking things are happening. Then we had, because I can hear the dog barking, then we had 6 months of me trying to get really deep on that expert status. So basically a year, at least a year, before it really, really turned a corner. So the consistency is the constant posting, having that plan, sticking to that plan, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And I will talk about the plan in a bit more. And do it as often as you humanly possibly can to put the content out. And this isn't, oh, I'm always putting out free stuff and giving free advice and nobody ever buys anything. Yeah, there's a limit, obviously, but not a limit to the free information. This is just to raise your status. Then your ability to sell and convert from interest to sale is a whole different webinar. But when you put out blogs, some of you are putting out, now remember what I said earlier? That you see what those top blogs are that are answering those top problems, and then you analyze those blogs and see where they fall short. And then you do it better. Yeah. You don't just sit down and write a blog. Yeah, because when you sit down and write a blog, I'm not being funny, but the majority of you are not writing very good blogs, myself included. Can get a bit confused and a bit all over the place, and you know, I'm actually better talking to camera, believe it or not, for somebody who's got English like at so many different levels. It's ridiculous. And originally trained actually partly in journalism. The fact that I'm better at talking to camera is slightly worrying, and even then I go a lot. So, you know, only put out more than one blog a week if that blog is going to be high quality and what appeals to your niche and answers your niche's one of their top problems. Otherwise, don't put out more than one blog a week. Don't put out more than one blog a month if you find it impossible. Make sure that when you put something out, it's really good. It's really, really damn good. Yeah? But then you kind of worry that, you know, no one sees it. So you've written this blog and then no one comments, no one sees it, no one's read it, it's a waste of time. And that's why, if you've got so many hours a week available to write a blog, you should actually go only half of that, because half needs to be spent promoting it or promoting that content. So if I spend 2 hours writing something, I need to spend at least 2 hours promoting it, even if it's paid promotion. Right, having a calendar, having a plan. Well, there's a reason to do that. We know that we've got our top 100 concerns, yeah? So we can actually now plan headlines and plan in publish by date, say on a spreadsheet, yeah? Nice, simple, old-fashioned thing, spreadsheet. That means we now have committed ourselves to publishing those titles on those days, yeah? So we now have to do our research and write or produce or video or podcast on that subject, and we can get in guest bloggers for it. We can ask guests onto our, you know, podcast. We can do all sorts of stuff, but we have our publish date. So we have a timetable we're working to. We're not waking up on a Monday morning going, what am I going to do this week? Maybe I should do something about sugar. Now, that doesn't mean don't react to trends, but that's very instant. And what if there isn't a trend that week? Yeah. So we have our timetable. We can also have a timetable, which I was discussing this morning with somebody, for like days. You know, if we wanted to get things into the local press, then we know our awareness days. We know certain events happen every single year. We know New Year, New You. We know that Valentine's Day comes up. Then that's quickly followed by Mother's Day. Then we have Easter. Then we have well, my birthday. I'm sure that's of interest to you, a real national event that is. We have the school holidays, so we know those months. Those are things that are happening. We can write about those. We can write press releases about those. We can make our blogs and our videos and our podcasts about those, and we can try and tackle some of those problems as well. We get our publishing dates. We also know that there are awareness months. You know, we have Stocktober. We have, I think we still have Stocktober was drink, wasn't it? I think we have a giving up smoking one in March. We have the moustache and the guys and their testicular cancer, which is November. So we know that there are awareness days that are usually quite well followed. Now, it's no point 2 days before the awareness day suddenly hashtagging away. Have it planned. Have the articles written. Be ready to rock and roll when these things happen so that everything's nice and smooth and everything's following through. Right, last one. I know this has been quite long. Right, reaching your audience. Okay, so we talked about how it can feel like you're not getting anywhere. Yeah? So how do we reach our audience? Well, we can guest blog. So you know those top 20, 30 sites and forums? Yeah? See who takes guest bloggers. See who wants guest bloggers. Blog for them. Get all those links involved so that they backlink onto your website so that you are now with the popular guys. You know, the cool kids at school? Yeah, you want to be there, don't you? You want to be with the cool kids at school. And if the cool kids at school don't like you very much and don't want you, pay for them. Sort of. Promote your own blogs. Promote posts. Boost them. This is a business you're running. You should be prepared to invest some money in your business. What are we talking? $5, $10 a day to target your audience through their likes and interests, for example, in some kind of Facebook graph search, or a lookalike audience. Oh, please do not ask all your friends who are PTs to like your page, because guess what happens? All your PT friends see all your boosted posts and your adverts, and maybe most of them aren't going to buy from you. So be very, very careful about all that page-like business if you're going to do lookalike audience or people who like my page. Far better to actually go into graph search and create an audience according to likes and interests. And you should know your avatar well enough to know what their likes and interests are to be able to reach them. Just be careful it's not too popular a thing because it's going to cost you more money. Anyway, you can pay to play, even with content, and no, you can't see the the ROI on that. Just have to trust me, it has some, but 6 months, 9 months, 12 months time, suddenly snowball down the hill, massive snowball, overrunning you, loads of inquiries. Yeah. SEO, just mentioned it earlier. Search engine optimization. Get some good SEO on everything you do, and you will rise to your ranks in Google. And that will help, again, with anyone doing a little Google search looking for the answer to their problems. Obviously, you can post in forums and groups, and that can be, podcasts, it can be excerpts from blogs, it can be little videos. One of the guys in VIP is doing really, really well, posting videos to free groups in Facebook that are just information and friendly, posts. They aren't always, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. It's not always that. It's just being the expert, being the go-to person. Golden rule of any of it is make sure your system is one that can capture email so you can keep talking to them. Yeah. By your daily emails, or you buy, every other day emails, how often you want to email. Make sure that where they go has the tracking pixel so you can create your own custom audience for future Facebook adverts. And that is going to really, really help you in the future, because then these people who are seeing stuff from you have seen stuff from you before. And if know, like, and trust is built on how often we come across someone, and building expert status is how often they seem to be talking sense in our language to our level about our problems, then you constantly targeting those people, and it sounds a bit stalkerish, but you constantly targeting those people are more likely to lead to a sale. It takes 8 points of contact for a sale. 8 points of contact for a sale, and that's not in one phone conversation. So up to 8, and the closer you get to that 8, the bigger the return. And guess how often and where most people give up? 1. So if only a few % of sales are made on 1 contact, and up to 80% are made on contact number 8, and you give up at number 1, you're not really driving that plan through. So, end of thingy. Going to check this is all recorded, because otherwise I have to do it all again. Get this up to you. Do comment on it. Do consider coming and joining the 6 weeks, because during the 6 weeks you won't just have data for later, you'll actually be doing it week to week. So you'll have that plan, you'll have those spreadsheets, you'll know your sources, you know who you have to guest blog for, you will know to start reaching out to those people. And I will speak to you soon. Bye.